the podcast that finishes your workday in a very Red Raider way. This is the Tech Talk Podcast from Double T 97.3.
Us and Clint, I'm Aaron. We're with you today until 6 o'clock. We'd love to hear your thoughts and comments on the Yates Flooring Center chat line at doublet973.com. It's time for your look at today's biggest sports headlines, brought to you by our good friends at Specs Wine, Spirits, and Finer Foods. The Texas Tech Red Raider men's basketball team will take on Georgetown tomorrow, 7 o'clock, in a Big 12 Big East battle matchup at the USA. Red Raiders are 4-2. Hoyas 4-3. Texas quarterback Hudson Card, a former top recruit, intends to enter the NCAA transfer portal. He is a redshirt sophomore who will have 3 years of eligibility remaining at his next destination. 5 starts under his belt at Texas. Threw for 1,500 yards and 11 touchdowns and 2 interceptions over the last 2 seasons for Texas. He started this year 3 games for the Longhorns, winning games against UTSA and West Virginia. Which one did he not win again? I'm forgetting.
Yeah. I think I remember that one.
What game did he lose?
Ooh, Aaron, pick me.
Clint, do you recall?
Oh, it was the Texas Tech game here at the Jones.
That's right.
That's right. There you go.
Oh, man. What a coinky-dink. Leaders of the college football playoff issued an ultimatum to the Rose Bowl this week, giving a deadline of Wednesday to determine whether the CFP can expand in time for the start of the 2024 regular season. And if the game's most storied bowl can't agree to the terms, it's possible it could be excluded from the New Year's 6 bowl rotation in the next contract. If the CFP does not expand in time for the 2024 season, it will lose roughly $450 million. I'll say that again, $450 million in potential gross revenue.
It's a big opportunity cost, and it takes a unanimous vote, and they've got 11 votes, and the Rose Bowl is number 12. And like you said, I think the key part, and we talked about this from the Ross Dellinger article last week, it sounds like retribution, because you and I talked about, like, wouldn't the other 11 be so mad that when it comes back around in 2026, it's like, oh, okay, now we don't need a unanimous vote. The entire thing can be reformed, and you can just do without the Rose Bowl. And the Dellinger article confirmed it, and now more and more reporting is coming out to that effect, which means that you and I's just simple pettiness here at the dais is an accurate depiction of the scene in the playoff room, apparently.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to be like an Alamo Bowl, and I love the Alamo Bowl, I'm not dunking on it, but if you want to like relegate yourself to kind of that tier of a bowl game so that you can, latch on to that one time slot so that it matches so perfectly with your precious parade, hey man, go set yourself on fire. Go to town. But this is happening. If they screw this up, because this seems to be the only big obstacle in the way standing before us and an expanded playoff in 2024. I will find a phone number to call and express, I'll piss and moan. That's ridiculous. And for folks that go, well, why does it really matter? Just look at this weekend, right? I mean, think about how much, if you watch college football at all this weekend, halftime shows, wrap-up shows, whatever, man, it seems like the playoff is largely set. Maybe even 3 of those spots are in no matter what happens, right? I mean, that commentary is out there. But if you had a 12-team playoff, all of these games would matter. Mm-hmm. Because you'd be talking about vying for a first-round bye. You'd be talking about vying for a home field advantage of the first round for a team that's seeded 5 through 12, right?
Right, teams trying to play their way into the 12th spot, to the bottom of the thing, the whole deal. Yeah, because the it feels like the conference championship would have more value at this point as well. Because right now it doesn't matter a ton. But, part of that conversation, part of that 12-team bracket structure involves conference championships. And so, in essence, it moves that playoff structure out another week or two. It'll also make for a longer football season. I mean, I think that's part of the narrative as well, that the season could be starting in late August or on that weekend prior to Labor Day, that'll have a little more stretch to it. That this time of year that slows down, I'll say this time of year, but here in another week or two where it's just the Army-Navy game. And this gets into one of the things we talked about, the coming clash of the NFL and college football. These games could be played on Saturdays, these playoff games and whatnot. And remember, in another 2 weeks, the NFL starts playing games on Saturday when college football is done.
They start moving in.
Yeah, and it's always been that way. I mean, it's been, I'll say always, but for 30 years it's been that way, as I recall. But because I always liked it once you got into, college football is over. Okay, well, we got 2 games on Saturday, to like probably an early in an afternoon. I'm sure now there's night game slots and everything else. But, there's more ripples to this. But to your point, I mean, just the excitement, and I guess that's a better way to say it, is it draws it out in a way that more teams are involved. And that's what would happen anytime a playoff structure expands. But there's more, Kansas State would be looking at this game going, hey, we beat those guys and we're doing something.
And think about it, too, this way, because in terms of how the regular season will be valued more in a 12-team format, look at Oregon losing to Oregon State. I mean, that potentially, if the 12th team was in effect, that potentially costs them a spot in the playoff.
Mm-hmm.
Think about Clemson and losing to South Carolina, the same thing. So much more would be at stake for so many more different teams in these last few weeks.
That's a great point.
Whereas as it sits right now, you've got 3 teams that feel pretty good about, hey, we're in no matter what.
Right.
Even TCU, like for as much as folks question TCU, it seems like they're pretty much in.
Yeah, they don't want to get beat, but they certainly and put it in the hands of the committee. But they don't want to. Now, I would think the one thing that would affect those teams that you're talking about adversely would be getting your butt kicked.
Sure.
Just getting smoked this weekend, 40-7, and then giving. It's sort of like we're always told as athletes, hey, don't put your fate in the hands of the ref, or us baseball guys. Don't let a 2-strike pitch go by that's close. You can't, and it'd be the same thing. Hey, TCU, you don't want to lose this weekend to a team you've already beat, and then sit around and bite your nails when the committee's voting. You just don't want to do that.
You big on biting your nails?
No, not in there.
File them down?
I kind of bite them too. I don't bite them down to the quick like the real hardcore nail biters, but I'll sort of do some. I'll either trim them with nail trimmers or just bite them down to
a little bit too.
Yeah, a little unruly. But it's not a lifetime. One of those things. I got a lot of problems. That's not one of them, I don't think.
More Tech Talk next.
The podcast put together with Red Raider fans in mind. This is the Tech Talk Podcast from Double T 97.3.
Hey there, it's Tech Talk on Double T 97.3 and Double T 97.3.com with Gus and Clint. I'm Aaron. We're with you today until 6. We'd love to hear your thoughts and your comments today on the Yates Flooring Center chat line at Double T 97.3.com. All guests appear via the Benchmark hotline. Hey, how about this? Starting very soon, is this next week, Clint? We'll be airing a show, mostly on The Score, but sometimes maybe here on Double T 97.3, called Astro Line, about the Houston Astros.
Yeah, I'm not for sure.
AKA America's team.
I'm not for sure on the exact date of that start time, but soon. If you're an Astros fan or a Line fan, keep your ears tuned for Astro Line.
Official off-season hot stove show for the Houston Astros. Will be hosted by the play-by-play voice of the world champs, Robert Ford, and The first installment will include a special guest from the World Series team. How about that? Very exciting. This on the Yates Flooring Center chat line. Somebody asks this. Am I the only one who thought the OU field goal in overtime was actually good? No, I've seen a lot of comments about that. It certainly looked very close on TV. If you had not had the officials down there waving no good, I would have just assumed that it was good. I did listen to a podcast yesterday of two former Oklahoma players. They were kind of giving their thoughts on the game, and so I listened. And one of them, I think, is on the OU radio broadcast.
Okay.
I think he's like their sideline guy. And he talked to one of the OU video guys on the bus right at the airport on the way back. And, of course, they're right in the middle there up on the roof. And the video guy said, hey, no, it was no good. And, no one had a better view of that outside of maybe the officials than those folks. So
yeah, and that's the tough part about our view. The TV views centered up, but from the other end, and so you don't have. It's kind of like trying to see the outside corner on pitches on the TV, and the very fine amount. But the ref. It wasn't like the ref was like, oh, he's kind of like, yeah, no, just kind of routine, no, and that was the end of it. But on TV, you could see where, just from the vantage point of the camera, going, hey, it's inside the pole. But you got to factor in the fact that that's not the view. Truly, the guy with the best view is the dude looking up the pole. You can't get a better view than that. A lot of times TV will give us better views than those guys have in the moment. Mm-hmm. But truly, that dude in that spot has one job. That. And I'm not saying it's an easy job, but I'm just saying it's not like he had bodies flying around him and all that stuff to make the call. No, you just look up the pole and yes or no.
This, the chat line, speculate bowl for Texas Tech. So I think if you're doing a heat map, Gus, I think probably your best chance right now, your most likely destination is the Cheez-It Bowl in Orlando against an ACC program, North Carolina, Florida State.
Florida State, yep.
Outside shot at the Alamo Bowl. It seems very unlikely, but I'd be all for it. I love that bowl game.
I do too.
Against the Pac-12 team.
Yeah, and I'm with you. I think outside shot, and it's the conversation we talked about yesterday, and I loved what you said. On one hand, Texas has been there, and they're the ones projected to be there. This will be 3 out of 4 years. Mm-hmm. Well, obviously, they got a ton of huge fan base right there, which you might look at that and go, hey, isn't there a little fatigue with all that? But it is that brand, and it is 90 miles down the road. But also what you said, you made a great point. That's, there's probably somebody in that room going, hey, this could be the last time for this for a while, unless they get aligned with the SEC. Mm-hmm. We get 2 more years of that.
That might make Oklahoma more attractive than a typical 6-6 team for, the Texas Bowl or the First Responders Bowl or the Liberty Bowl, stuff like that. Because again, if it's your turn to draft, Oklahoma's not 6-6 very often.
No,
right? They're not.
That's right.
Texas Bowl, Liberty Bowl, and they're not getting a chance to pick Oklahoma almost ever.
Right. Now you're exactly right. It's a mixed bag. They would own it and be happy to have it, and it's just really big tradition brand and all. Probably gonna be a low excitement fan base there. Not to say they wouldn't travel and sell out their allotment and do the meet all the minimum standards, but I don't think they'll hit Memphis. Now, DFW would be a little bit different story just because they got enough people there. I don't think they. Oh, my bad.
When I was walking in Memphis.
Don't you have like a CPR class to go to or something?
I don't think they'd hit one of those cities just with a fever pitch. Right, you know what I mean? It
would be a wave of Sooner fans crashing over
not
certain city in Tennessee that I'm not going to name.
Far western.
Feels like you're pretty mad at Gus right now for
yeah,
bringing that up.
My bad.
And I knew it. The second that he said
you
that
kind of
word,
Streisand affected it, though. He might have just been in there sleeping he always does.
I could already tell he was moving the mouse.
When I was walking in Memphis.
And so I
beautiful.
think, outside shot at Alamo, and then I think probably a higher chance than Alamo, but still unlikely would be Texas Bowl.
And Alamo,
That seems like your floor.
you said it, Alamo involves Pac-12, and a lot of those projections are showing UCLA there. And so I think the brands are the brands that are just being thrown out there as projected opponents are UCLA, Florida State, North Carolina,
Florida, if it's in the
Florida.
Texas Bowl.
Yeah. I mean, and so it's an opportunity to punch up, if you will, or go be the little guy that nobody thinks is going to win, and I mean,
You're not playing South Florida.
No, it's
this
not
bowl game.
not one of the American Conference teams or something like that. There's no, and that really could be the difference between we wanted our 7-5 and we wanted our 4th place. Well, here you go, and that's great.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it really is. It's high visibility all the way around, and I think we sort of look at our club and at our roster and say Tyree Wilson probably wasn't going to play in this game, healthy or not. But I think most of the rest of our guys would. I mean, I don't think any of the rest of our guys, and this is just me talking here, but I don't know how many of them are locked, second round guys or whatever, other than Tyree Wilson, that wouldn't benefit from having a big game and doing some good things and going and playing big on a stage like that, and maybe playing themselves into an invitation to the bowl, the Senior Bowl type things, and those opportunities to go be seen at workouts and get invited to combines and all that kind of stuff. And so, and that's a really a bigger conversation for later, and it's it involves a lot of projection on our part. But I think this bowl season is going to be awesome. I think we're going to be on Monday. We're going to have have an awesome opportunity to talk about playing against one of these really big brands and go pull an upset. Wouldn't it be fun to watch Joey McGuire coach a team that's trying to to punch up, or however you want to say it, pull the upset, whatever, and in a stage like that, where emotion's a big deal, where a big part of your success in a bowl game is, are you excited to be there? And I think we will be excited to be in whatever bowl we're in, and the question about some of those other programs, we don't know.
More tech talk next.
The podcast that finishes your workday in a very Red Raider way. This is the Tech Talk Podcast from Double T 97.3.
Hey there, happy Tuesday. Thank you for spending part of your afternoon with us alongside Gus and Clint. I'm Aaron. We're having fun today. Hope you are too. We'd love to hear what you think on the Yates Flooring Center chat line at doublet973.com. All guests appear via the Benchmark hotline. So, Gus, this is with the advent of the transfer portal window now, which opens up officially on Monday, although players are already announcing, hey, I intend to enter the portal, etc. We're in this really weird and interesting, although perhaps also worrisome, depending on your team, period where you have coaches and players moving around at the same time. Head coaches, assistant coaches will start to pick up here pretty quick, first coordinators and then position coaches.
The ripple effect.
But a lot of movement around, a lot of back and forth around the sport. And with the advent of NIL and with the advent of the transfer portal, I think this is just going to hasten the process of players being classified as employees. And I think it gets down to control. These universities, these programs have had control of their players for 70 years, right? For really the beginning of the NCAA and the use of the term, the ginned up term student athlete, up until 3-4 years ago, these departments controlled the players. If you wanted to leave, we had to sign off on where you were going to go, right? You couldn't just go willy-nilly anywhere. Now it's the complete opposite. Not only can you leave at any time and go anywhere, you can go get paid for it as well. And so I point you to Nebraska, where new head coach Matt Rule is expected to hire, and this has been widely reported, Marcus Satterfield, who's had been the OC at South Carolina. Rule is going to hire him to run the offense at Nebraska. A lot of rumors out there, Gus, and I don't know the mechanics of how this would work, seeing as how he already used the portal. But a lot of chatter out there that Spencer Rattler might follow him to Nebraska. We saw just a few years ago, right? Coach Kitley, right, went from Houston Baptist, which is now Houston Christian, to Western Kentucky, and brought with him standout quarterback, 2 really good receivers. Right? The whole kit and caboodle. Eric Morris goes from Incarnate Word, where he was the head coach, to Wazoo as the new offensive coordinator, and brings with him star quarterback Cameron Ward. Fairly common now. If you're South Carolina, right, you don't want to lose Spencer Rattler because the coach left. Incarnate Word didn't want to lose Cameron Ward. I'm sure Houston Baptist didn't want to lose Bailey Zappi and the Stearns brothers. If these players are classified as employees, you're able to exert more control over what they do and where they go, right? Whether it's a initial 3-year contract or, whatever this is, maybe it's different player to player. Maybe everybody gets the same deal. I don't know what it is. But at least that way you take back some control. You give up some stuff, right? This is a big line to cross.
And a lot of what you're giving up is healthcare related. We're probably getting over into labor law, which I'm sure is a topic you and I know.
Oh, I'm well read on labor law.
Yes, 100%. Absolutely. But I think
a hobby of mine.
Exactly. The workers' comp type situations where somebody has a significant injury, see that old broken down football players or whatever that have, that threw their body against a brick wall for a few years, or one catastrophic injury, and those type things that create that put the healthcare situation into a different sort of category as an employee versus what we have now. And that's not to say that most of these schools don't take care of them, but it's not lifetime care, and we're seeing some of those lawsuits and some of those things sort of play out. Like, hey, you got CTE at age 50 and I gave you 5 of my best years. Are you liable? And those court cases so far are going the NCAA's way because a lot of that stuff's hard to prove, but there's a different sort of obligation, I think, if they're treated as employee versus student athlete.
Because NIL has been a thing officially for just like a year and a half. We're talking about July
summer
1st,
of
2021.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of talk, and I remember this in the chat line here, Twitter, message boards everywhere. Hey, this isn't college football that I grew up loving, and I'm out. Or if this turns into free agency, I'm just not going to watch. And the TV ratings suggest, at least right now, that for the most part, people have not stopped watching. And so I'm curious for the folks that were and maybe still are adamantly against these players getting paid anything more than just a scholarship. Are you happy with the status quo? Or would you prefer to not have to worry about Baron Morton or Donovan Smith or Tyler Shuck leaving for another program, right? Or, Bradley or any of your guys. If you acknowledge that the status quo is unlikely to change and go backward, which it's not, it's not going to happen. Wouldn't you rather just take one more small step here to where you get, not you, but your programs have more control over who stays and who goes?
Right, and this isn't a Texas Tech question. It's not a Big 12 question. Yeah, this is an NCAA question or whatever governing body there is. And you bring up a good point. Well, I won't change the topic into NIL as it relates to our roster next year and some of that kind of stuff. But we're headed down that, and there's been and I'm using the word union loosely, but what's yet to happen is any sort of a organized labor type movement among student athletes for just so everyone's clear on what we're talking about. And again, I'm not necessarily talking about a full-on unionization as much as just, hey, all the athletes at the Big 12 schools are together on, hopefully it didn't come down to some ugly strike and they won't run out for the
4 playoff teams.
Right. Well, and that's always been the fear. I think the biggest fear has always been either in conjunction with the 4 games, the national championship game, or the Final Four. The Final Four is the one that probably, because they're going, hey, you're really talking about 12 guys here and 12 guys here, that would hold the world at bay. That would, you want to talk about shutting down the sports world, that would be it.
More Tech Talk next.
It's every Red Raiders' favorite podcast. This is the Tech Talk Podcast from Double T 97.3.
Hey, it's Tech Talk on Double T 97.3 and Double T 97.3.com with Gus. I'm Aaron. We're joining you today from the First United Bank studio with you until 6. We'd love to hear what you have to say on the Yates Flooring Center chat line at Double T 97.3.com. Gus, you wanted to finish your thought?
Oh, yeah. I just thought we were talking NIL.
Right.
And as it relates to the Red Raiders, and it feels like to me there's a, the issue's always been would a guy, try the NFL when he graduated or, go on and get a real job. And it was sort of bifurcated. You had one or the other. And most would try the NFL just because there's no,
Right, might as well.
Yeah, you can still do
chase
whatever.
out that ground ball to use the baseball.
There you go. I like it. And but the NIL presents the sort of a third leg to this in terms of a like some of these guys that have a COVID year coming,
right? Like Jalen Hutchings, Tony Bradford.
You bet. The cornerbacks, and who knows? Maybe there's a one of the young talented skill guys or something, Jerron Bradley or something's looking at USC or USC's looking at him or some back channel crap's going on or whatever. I mean that can be, but specifically. And really talking about not Tyree Wilson, but the 2 defensive linemen, the 2 corners, and maybe Shuck, that are guys that have, my word, a fringe shot at the NFL. Probably get invited to a camp. I don't, and you maybe could put Sir Roderick in this, but it sounded a lot more like Coach McGuire talked about him being gone. Maybe the kicker punter as well. I don't know, but these guys, the third opportunity for them is to hang around in college another year and get paid a sort of a living wage, if you will. Or, the problem is you're not really competing against, hey, that guy, got his teaching certificate and he's already got a coaching job lined up at Podunk High School. No, you're really competing against, you are competing against that to an extent. You're also might be competing against Tennessee if they like the looks of him. And so that's a concern. But I think with regard to next year's roster, these guys being able to, get them back here has a lot to do with just the life decision of, hey, do I want to go and roll the dice and do this now or come back and play one more year for, in a situation right now that feels pretty good. Love the coach. I love my teammates. We got a chance to
kind
get
of a
better next
tiebreaker.
year. Yeah.
You
bet.
Like it's instead of the binary choice of, hey, come back or go professional, if you're kind of torn, this might be a nice tiebreaker that kind of helps them decide to come back. And and I'm not, I don't want to make it sound like, hey, it's all good. Because it's not. I mean, I'm say it's all good for the kids, but if somebody stands out too much, the portal can work against you. But it feels like that those and it also feels like, other than Shuck, and Shuck's probably in line for something like this. I mean, if Shuck says, hey, I want to come back, and there's a lot of reasons why that would happen. We talked about some of them yesterday, but the not having to win over another locker room and learn a new system and compete for a job. And I don't say compete for a job, but you know what I mean. Being familiar with the system, being in it versus, Starting from zero.
Yeah, and then, or just, all right, I'm going to give this NFL thing a shot. Because he'll get attention and he'll get invited to camp. Is he a budding NFL star? Probably not. But he would get a shot, and a lot of guys live for that and work for that. And he's either engaged or married, probably has his degree or two. I mean, and so a lot of his life is lined up, and I don't know all the exact facts on that, but you could see where a guy like that would come out. But make it worth his time in terms of NIL money and those things, and you might be able to sort of buy that extra year. I hate to use the word buy, but you know what I mean. That makes that decision a little bit harder, or makes it worth his while to go, no, I'll play that extra year of football, and who knows what it'll do to his NFL prospects. But if he's fringy enough and the money's right to do the NIL thing, then those decisions get a little easier. And I just think the NIL thing's going to play in different ways than just, can you get good players recruited here? I think it's going to have a lot to do with the portal.
This from Duff in Houston on the Yates Flooring Center chat line. Please tell me we're not playing in the Cheez-It Bowl. Well, don't know for sure. We'll find out Sunday. It seems fairly likely. I would say that's the
leading candidate.
You have more of a chance to end up there than Alamo or Texas.
And it would be fun to have them play closer. I get it, because it would be fun to be able to, at least entertain the option of hopping in the car and going.
But I think you get the better opponent in Orlando.
You think you said better by more winnable or more visible?
Great question. Yeah, I mean better by in terms of a ranked team, right, or a team with more wins. Because you might get Florida if you drop to the Texas Bowl, but they're not the Florida. I mean this is Dollar Tree Florida, right? This year,
not Steve Spurrier's peak Florida,
right?
Not Tebow Florida.
And I guess UCLA is they're up there too, and you might see them in the Alamo Bowl, but I think generally probably safer to assume you'll get a pretty beefy opponent in Orlando, whether it's North Carolina with Mac Brown. That would be very interesting. I think I'm kind of rooting for that, or a ranked Florida State team.
Yeah, I think that's the projections, and we kicked that around an hour ago at the beginning of the show. But I'm with you. It'd be more fun to have them close by and have that trip be a little more accessible than buying plane tickets and going to Orlando. But there's a tremendous opportunity to play a really good name brand college football program and get after their tail. Because don't you think that Coach McGuire, and I don't know if we got the kind of horses to play with those people, I don't know. But to be able to get after, just to be big emotion and excited to play and all that. And I would assume most of our roster intact as well.
This is the chat line. Let's be honest. We were a pass first team in 2015. That helped the run. You're being a little naive about our O-line being good in that year, but think what you want, LOL. Yeah, I mean, bottom line, I'm tired of being nice about it. You're dumb. You're dumb if you think that the O-line sucked in 2015. Just flat out dumb. Clip it, save it, play it over, promo, rejoiner. You're an idiot. LaRaven Clark, NFL draft pick, Colts, right? And I think he's still playing in the NFL. Actually, you had the Morales brothers on that line, seniors both. You had Jared Castor, a senior, one of your best centers, I would say, of the air raid era. Not the best, but one of the best. And then you had Balin Brown, who was a very solid Big 12 player for you. I think he was all Big 12 at some point in his career. So yeah, I'm not gonna baby around that stupid narrative that Pat Mahomes played with a bunch of middle schoolers at Texas Tech. He had a very good O-line. You had an NFL running back. You had NFL receivers. Great quarterback, no doubt, but it wasn't a one-man show. More Tech Talk next.
The podcast put together with Red Raider fans in mind. This is the Tech Talk Podcast from Double T 97.3.
Hey there, happy Tuesday. Thank you for spending part of your afternoon with us. With Gus, I'm Aaron. We're joining you today from the First United Bank studio. We'd love to hear from you on the Yates Flooring Center chat line at doublet973.com. Cincinnati is open.
The University of.
Right, the Bearcats football head coaching position. Luke Fickell is off to Wisconsin. He's bringing over several of his assistants. And now, U of C is in the market for a new head football coach. And I saw a report out there that Matt Campbell was involved in this search to some degree. Now, I've also seen this kind of debunked later on, and it seems like a stretch to me, Gus, but it is shocking to me because I spend a lot of time, especially around this time of year with the coaching carousel, I spend a lot of time following this on like the message board level because this is something that I'm really interested in. Sure. I love this sort of stuff.
And it's also vocational for you.
Sure.
I mean, it's
we talk
along
about
the lines of your real job.
And I was shocked, stunned actually, at how many Cincinnati fans, at least on these message boards, kind of turned their nose up at the idea of Matt Campbell. Like, oh, no, we can do way better than Matt Campbell. And it wasn't just like, I'm not cherry picking just a handful of negative responses, just to kind of, it was fairly universal, like, yeah, no thank you, pass.
I think, one of the factual things that go along with this is Matt Campbell's an Ohio kid.
True.
Grew up in the state, played for a high school. I think dad was a high school coach, played at a smaller college there in the state. And
Mount Union?
Yeah, which is one of the ones that's had a ton of success, or they used to.
Right.
But and I think even, some Bowling Green and some this and some that on his coaching tree. But most notably, he was the head coach at Toledo prior to Iowa State.
Right.
And so that there's Ohio all over it. That's the factual part of it. That's why it's easy to link them up.
Iowa State is the only coaching job that he has ever held outside the state of Ohio.
Wow. Bowling
Green, GA, Mount Union for a few years, back to Bowling Green, and then Toledo.
Wow. Interesting. Yeah, that's and that's not that huge of a state that you go, I never left Texas or never left California or whatever. Like, Ohio's not that big, but I think it speaks to him having deep ties. So the connection is logical, but I think the broader topic here is, maybe not broader, but just the secondary topic here is what's interesting about this to me for sure, and perhaps you as well, is what we're about to be in a conference with these guys, and just to see the fan base, what do the fans think of? How do they see themselves? And I'm sure, Steve, the Cincinnati fan, sees himself as the fan of a 12-1 team that played,
they won the playoff last year,
whatever,
sure.
Yeah, in the Final Four, lost in the semis. That's. Understandably, if that was Texas Tech, we'd be glommed onto that as opposed to whatever they were this year, 8-4.
I think
9-3.
I think maybe 9-3.
Yeah, so solid, but they're, and so you can see where their visions, their, I won't say delusions of grandeur. We'll find that out in time. But you made a really good comparison here on the show yesterday about the idea of them. Their experience, their comp, if you will, for joining the Big 12 is a lot like West Virginia's, just in terms of, and they've got some assets and some different things at each of the schools, but that don't make it a perfect analogy, but just the experience of West Virginia joining the Big 12 feels like it could be a lot like what Cincinnati's was. The kind of off by themselves geographically, and they may be a little bit farther along with some facilities and stuff. The thing I think about when I think of those two schools is Huggins coached both of them. And Coach was prominently there. Did big things at Cincinnati for a little while. But I'm fascinated. I'm less curious about the job and who they hire, and more just, okay, so we've got that kind of fan coming into the conference.
Well, and I think too, I think I am less optimistic about the Bearcats than any of the four newcomers. I think they'll have the hardest time.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, obviously they play in the same conference as Houston and UCF, so it's not like they're coming in from a markedly tougher or easier conference. But Houston recruits Texas. They have a very natural, gigantic recruiting territory. Heck, they could just recruit in Houston and do really, really well.
No doubt.
UCF has Florida, which is a lot of speed, it's a very hotly contested recruiting ground, but still, it's a great area from which to recruit. Ohio's okay, but it's not Texas, it's not Florida. And then BYU, you have the advantage of LDS, you have the advantage of players returning from the mission and being just 2 years older. I don't think UC has anything that really sets them apart there, especially now that Fickle is gone. I think Fickle was like a great kind of ace in the hole, the steward to kind of keep the ship steady and be this kind of beacon to recruits. Like, hey, I coached in a playoff. How many of the other guys said,
sure?
Because he would have been the only one.
Yeah, that's a good point.
In the Big 12 that coached in a playoff. Now,
point.
Dykes will probably match that here in several weeks, but you could sell that.
Yeah,
but I don't know
great point.
Whoever they end up hiring can do the same.
You've been listening to the Tech Talk podcast from Double T 97.3. Check out Double T973.com for more from Lubbock Sports Station.